Picture this. You're sitting at a dinner table in Sardinia, and your host proudly presents you with a wheel of cheese. Except this cheese is moving, not because the table's shaking, because thousands of translucent maggots are throwing the world's grossest rave inside it. Welcome to Casu Marzu, the only food where alive and kicking is both literal and terrifying. The name translates to rotten cheese in the local dialect, not aged cheese, not fermented cheese, rotten. They went with rotten. That's like calling your restaurant Food Poisoning Palace and expecting Michelin stars. But Sardinians have been making this delicacy for centuries, proving that tradition and good judgment don't always hold hands at family reunions. This isn't some accidental discovery of moldy leftovers. Making Casu Marzu is an intentional process that requires dedication, patience, and the kind of decision-making skills that make you question humanity's entire evolutionary journey. It starts innocently enough with Pecorino Sardo, a perfectly normal sheep's milk cheese that has done nothing to deserve what's about to happen to it. The cheesemakers wait until spring or summer, then deliberately leave whole wheels of pecorino outside with part of the rind removed. They're basically putting up a neon sign that says, "Fly Buffet, now open." And right on cue, along comes Piophila casei, the cheese fly, whose life mission is apparently to turn dairy products into nightmare fuel. These flies lay their eggs in the cracks of the cheese, not one or two eggs, hundreds, thousands. They approach egg laying with the enthusiasm of someone trying to break a world record. Once the eggs hatch, the real magic begins, and by magic, I mean biological warfare on your sense of comfort. The translucent larvae immediately start eating through the cheese like tiny disgusting excavators. They're about 8 millimeters long, which is somehow the perfect size to be both too big to ignore and too small to pick out easily. Nature really nailed the horror aesthetic on this one. As these maggots chew their way through the pecorino, their digestive enzymes break down the cheese's fats. This process creates what scientists call advanced fermentation and what normal people call decomposition. The hard cheese transforms into a soft, creamy texture, the kind of texture that would be delightful if you could forget about the architect team responsible. This breakdown also produces a liquid called lagrima, that's Sardinian for teardrop. Even the cheese is crying about what's happening to it. This oily liquid oozes out of the wheel like the cheese is sweating from existential dread. When you see lagrima forming, you know the fermentation is working exactly as intended, which raises questions about the intentions. The entire process takes 3 months, 90 days of maggots throwing a house party in dairy form. By the time Casu Marzu is ready for consumption, a typical wheel contains thousands of live larvae, not hundreds, thousands. It's less of a cheese and more of a writhing apartment complex with a calcium-rich infrastructure. Traditional Sardinian cheesemakers have specific tricks to encourage maximum maggot activity. Some reduce the brine time on the original pecorino, others create small holes filled with oil to make the cheese even more attractive to flies. They're basically interior decorators for insects, which is definitely a career path guidance counselors don't mention. There's also a weather-related superstition. Locals believe the best Casu Marzu is made when the hot Sirocco wind blows in from the Sahara. The warmth softens the cheese, making it easier for maggots to tunnel through. So the perfect conditions for this delicacy require African desert winds. Mother Nature's sense of humor is both sophisticated and cruel. Now here's where things get legally complicated. In 1962, the Italian government looked at Casu Marzu and said, you know what? No. They banned it under laws prohibiting the consumption of food infected by parasites. Reasonable people everywhere nodded in agreement, but Sardinians? They laughed. They're still laughing. The European Union joined the party in banning Casu Marzu across all member states. Food safety regulations clearly state that only food safe for consumption can be sold. Apparently contains thousands of living insects failed the safety checklist, shocking absolutely no one except possibly the cheesemakers. Anyone caught selling Casu Marzu can face fines up to 50,000 euros. That's roughly $60,000 for Americans keeping score at home. You could buy a decent car with that money. Or apparently you could sell illegal maggot cheese and fund someone else's decent car against your will. Despite the ban, Casu Marzu thrives on Sardinia's black market, because nothing says thriving black market like contraband dairy products. Estimates suggest illegal production reaches 100 tons per year, worth between 2 and 3 million euros. Drug cartels have competition from cheese cartels. What a time to be alive. The illegal cheese sells for double the price of regular pecorino, supply and demand working perfectly in the underground maggot cheese economy. Somewhere, an economics professor is using this as a case study while simultaneously losing faith in human rationality. In 2009, Guinness World Records declared Casu Marzu the world's most dangerous cheese. Not most unusual, not most controversial. Dangerous. It beat out every other cheese on the planet for this honor. Cheddar and Brie can go home and reevaluate their life choices. The danger comes from those enthusiastic little maggots. If they're not properly destroyed by your stomach acid, they can survive the journey through your digestive system. Then they might decide to set up camp in your intestines, causing a condition called pseudomyiasis. Symptoms include vomiting, abdominal pain, and bloody diarrhea. It's like food poisoning with extra steps and live tenants. The larvae can also carry harmful microorganisms. Because apparently eating live maggots wasn't risky enough on its own, the maggots needed their own microscopic entourage of danger. It's biological threats all the way down, like the world's worst Russian nesting doll situation. But here's the kicker. Despite all these documented health risks, CNN reported that no confirmed cases of pseudomyiasis have actually been linked to Casu Marzu consumption. Sardinians have been eating this cheese for centuries without dropping dead en masse. Either they've built up impressive immunity, or the universe has a sense of irony. Traditional Sardinians have their own safety rule. The maggots must be alive when you eat the cheese. If the maggots have died, the cheese is considered unsafe. Let that sink in. Dead maggots? Dangerous. Living, squirming maggots? Perfectly fine. This is the food safety logic we're working with here. The reasoning actually makes sense in a twisted way. If the maggots have died, something killed them. That something might be bacterial contamination or toxins that also make the cheese unsafe for humans. So live maggots are your quality control inspectors. They're the canaries in the coal mine, except they're maggots in dairy products. Eating Casu Marzu is an experience that requires strategy and possibly psychological preparation. When you crack open the top of the wheel to scoop out the creamy interior, the maggots sense the disturbance. Then they panic. And when cheesefly larvae panic, they don't freeze, they jump. These maggots can launch themselves up to 15 centimeters into the air. That's about 6 inches of airborne insect trajectory. They're called cheese skippers for this exact reason. Because apparently, regular non-jumping maggots weren't exciting enough for this particular culinary adventure. The jumping creates a legitimate safety hazard, not from eating the maggots, but from them landing in your eyes. Yes, you read that correctly. Eye maggots are a real concern when dining on Casu Marzu. This is why experienced eaters hold their hands above the cheese while eating, creating a human shield against kamikaze larvae. Some diners wear glasses specifically to protect their eyes. Others just embrace the chaos and hope for the best. There's no middle ground with this cheese. You either go full defensive strategy, or you accept that eye-dwelling maggots might be on today's menu. For those who find live maggots unappealing, there's a removal technique. Seal the cheese in a paper bag. The maggots will panic from oxygen deprivation and start jumping frantically inside the bag. Eventually, they'll exhaust themselves and die. Then you can eat the cheese without its original occupants. It's humane-ish and solves the squirming problem. Boop. Other enthusiasts spin the cheese through a centrifuge, merging the maggots with the cheese into a homogeneous paste. This approach says, if you can't beat them, liquefy them. It's the culinary equivalent of closing your eyes and pretending vegetables are candy. But traditional Sardinian purists eat everything. Cheese and maggots together, alive and fresh. They open their mouths and commit to the experience fully. No half measures, no squeamishness, just pure, unadulterated cultural determination to prove that anything can be food if you're brave enough. Casu Marzu is traditionally served with pani carousel, a paper-thin Sardinian flatbread. The cheese gets spread on the bread like the world's most animated pâté. This is usually paired with Cannonau, a strong red wine. You need strong wine for this. Water isn't going to cut it psychologically. The flavor is described as intensely pungent, with Mediterranean, pastoral, and spicy notes. Intense is doing heavy lifting in that description. Some compare it to gorgonzola or blue cheese, but amplified to aggressive levels. The aroma alone has been compared to very strong blue cheese with added hints of ammonia. It's the kind of smell that announces its presence before entering the room. The aftertaste lingers for hours after eating, not minutes, hours. Your mouth becomes a long-term commitment to this experience. There's no quick escape. The cheese has made its point and will continue making it well into your evening plans. Travel writer Emily Wagner accidentally tried Casu Marzu during a Sardinian visit. Her host didn't warn her beforehand, just smeared some on bread and handed it over. Wagner described the texture as odd, somewhere between cream cheese and cottage cheese with harder bits mixed in. Those harder bits were probably maggots. Nobody mentioned that part explicitly. Her verdict? Not as bad as you would think. High praise for cheese containing thousands of live insects. It wasn't horrible, just odd. Considering everything she'd eaten in her life, maggot cheese ranks surprisingly moderate on the terrible scale. This either speaks well of the cheese or terribly of her previous dining experiences. The cultural significance of Casu Marzu runs deep in Sardinian history. Food writer Giovanni Fancello traces Sardinian cuisine back to the Roman Empire era. He points out that Pliny the Elder and Aristotle both wrote about eating worms. Ancient intellectuals apparently had strong opinions about insect consumption. Academic papers have truly changed over the millennia. Fancello argues that eating maggot cheese connects modern Sardinians to their ancestors. We are the sons of this food, he explains. It's a direct line from ancient pastoral culture to contemporary dinner tables. Though most family traditions involve recipes or stories, not intestinal parasites. The shepherding, milking, and fermentation required for Casu Marzu feature heavily in Sardinian superstition and mysticism. Some locals believe it has aphrodisiac properties. Nothing says romance like maggot cheese. It's the culinary equivalent of negging. If you can handle this, you can handle anything together. Every September, Sardinians celebrate Kabidani, marking the new agricultural year. This tradition comes from ancient Greek and Jewish calendars. Opening a wheel of Casu Marzu signals the end of summer and beginning of fall. It's like New Year's champagne, except with significantly more insects and psychological fortitude required. The cheese is eaten through late summer and fall until supplies run out. Sardinians rarely preserve it for later. When it's gone until next season. This creates natural scarcity, which probably helps maintain its mystique and black market value. Limited edition maggot cheese. Collect them all. Sardinia isn't alone in its love of larval cheese. 10 other Italian regions produce their own variants. Names like Formai Nice, Cacio Punto, Pecorino Marsetto, and Cascui Verm dot the Italian peninsula. It's a whole family tree of maggot cheeses. Italy really committed to this concept nationally. Other European countries have similar traditions. German Milbenkäse uses cheese mites. French mimolette also involves mites. Egypt makes mish. Even England's Stilton cheese might have historical mite connections. In 1724, writer Daniel Defoe described Stilton served with mites so thick they provided a spoon to eat them. History is wild. The University of Sassari's veterinary faculty collaborated with Sardinian farmers in 2005 to produce Casu Marzu legally and safely. They created controlled breeding environments for the cheese flies, attempting to standardize the entire process. Science tried to legitimize maggot cheese. This is what research grants fund sometimes. Sardinia has sought protected designation of origin status from the European Union. They want legal protection for Casu Marzu's name and traditional production methods. The same EU that banned the cheese for safety reasons. It's like asking someone who kicked you out of their house to also protect your forwarding address. The cheese is listed in Italy's database of traditional agri-food products by the Ministry of Agricultural, Food and Forestry Policies. Official government recognition of illegal maggot cheese. Italy contains multitudes of contradiction, and apparently that extends to food policy. Some proponents claim Casu Marzu has health benefits. The enzymes from larvae supposedly aid digestion. Like other fermented foods, it might contain beneficial probiotics for gut health, so it's either going to destroy your intestines or improve them. Russian roulette for your digestive system.
These purported benefits should obviously be weighed against the potential risks. Health authorities across multiple continents have banned this cheese.
But sure, maybe it's actually good for you. Science and common sense are having a wrestling match, and nobody knows who's winning. Gordon Ramsay's culinary adventures inspired food tourists to seek out Casu Marzu. Famous chefs trying extreme foods on television creates demand among adventurous eaters. Nothing says I'm cultured like deliberately eating illegal cheese that can jump into your eyes.
For locals, Casu Marzu represents more than shock value. It's intrinsically part of Sardinian food culture and identity.
Some shepherds view it as a unique personal pleasure for select few, an exclusive club where membership requires eating live maggots. The entry requirements are specific. Other Sardinians cringe at the thought of Casu Marzu. Even within Sardinia, people are divided. Some raised on a lifetime of salty pecorino unabashedly love its strong flavors. Others prefer their cheese less animated. Both groups are valid. Food preferences are personal, especially regarding insect content. The cheese is revered by many locals as an icon of traditional pastoral lifestyle. It connects them to the land, the sheep, the seasons, and apparently to entomology. It's heritage you can taste, assuming you're brave enough to get past what you can see. Despite everything, no deaths have been definitively linked to Casu Marzu. Sardinians have been eating it for potentially thousands of years without mass casualties. Either it's actually safer than authorities believe, or Sardinians have evolved into superhumans with cast-iron digestive systems. Both possibilities seem equally plausible at this point. The black market for Casu Marzu thrives precisely because it's forbidden. Prohibition creates mystique. If it were legal and available at every grocery store, would people still care? Or does part of the appeal come from eating something technically illegal? Psychology and rebellion mixed with dairy products. Casu Marzu forces everyone to confront their food boundaries. Where's your line? What's too far? Is it the maggots themselves? The jumping? The health risks? The illegality? Everyone's limit is different. This cheese is basically a personality test disguised as fermented sheep milk. At its core, Casu Marzu represents humanity's incredible ability to look at something objectively terrible and decide it's food anyway. Our ancestors saw flies laying eggs in cheese, watched maggots turn it to mush, tasted it, and thought, let's do this intentionally. That's either brilliant or insane. Possibly both. This cheese has survived legal bans, health warnings, Guinness World Records declaring it dangerous, and the general human instinct to avoid eating insects. Yet it persists. Illegal production continues, people keep eating it. Tradition trumps logic. Cultural identity outlasts common sense. Casu Marzu asks a fundamental question. What makes food food? Is it safety, flavor, cultural tradition, legal status, or just the willingness of enough people to put something in their mouths and swallow? This cheese suggests the answer is complicated and possibly disturbing. In the end, Casu Marzu is exactly what it claims to be. It's not pretending to be anything other than fermented sheep cheese full of living fly larvae that will jump at your face if provoked. The honesty is almost refreshing. Unlike modern processed foods with mysterious ingredients, you know exactly what you're getting. And what you're getting is maggots. So next time you're in Sardinia and someone offers you a cheese that's moving on its own, you'll know what you're dealing with. Whether you choose to try it depends entirely on your relationship with risk, tradition,